Not that a girl from Kansas knows a whole lot about surfing other than really as a metaphor. But I like it as a metaphor because the thing about surfing is that you can't control the ocean. The ocean comes and goes as it pleases. The tide comes in, the tide goes out. The waves are low and the waves are high. They have white caps. They have those great parts that curl over. It's with practice, I think you can learn to read the ocean a little bit, have your skill on staying on balance on the surfboard probably increases with time if you practice. Like everything that you practice, you can get better at it. But the thing I like about surfing is that life is like the ocean. And we are set afloat in life by our parents. There's no guarantee that things will be easy. There's no guarantee that things will go well. There's no guarantee that we will be happy, that we will be safe. The whole thing about life is that there's just no guarantee. And many, many times in history, the people who are revered, respected, who leave works of art or writing that inspire other people for generations, had pretty horrific lives, pretty challenging lives, pretty difficult lives. And one of the things that we admire about them is their ability to persevere through difficulty and their ability to maintain their attitude. It doesn't mean they were always happy. They were always on top. They were always cheerful. Especially the philosophers were looking at human nature and the difficulties in human nature and the constant flaws in human nature. And the thing about humans, we invent things and we think we are making progress. We are just making more and more cool things. The first guy who made the wheel, or first woman, or whoever it was that invented the wheel, trust me, everybody thought that was the best thing in the world up until that time. How about fire? That was a pretty massive shift. But this isn't any kind of change in human nature. It's only a change in the tools that the humans at that time were able to use to make the physical world, which was incredibly dangerous, just a little bit more safe. So I talked about the other day that my husband and I went for a little adventure drive, and we walked around in Westmoreland, Kansas, one of the campsites, and then by a natural spring on the Oregon Trail. One of the statistics I learned about the Oregon Trail is that 30,000 out of 250 to 300,000 people died. So that's 10% of the people who headed out on that trail to a better life. 10% died. And I'm pretty sure that starting that journey, everybody knew that not everybody would make it. Probably everybody thought they would make it, because that's human nature. And then they said that for the length of the trail, that 30,000 people, which is the number that they can find, graves they've found, and some of the graves they found when they were building roads that were not even marked. Okay, so people maybe marked them. Maybe they laid a stone over the grave, but it wasn't engraved. It wasn't a marker. It wasn't a graveyard. It was just a person, hey, Mary, just a person buried with a stone, or even well, there wasn't a lot of wood, but they might have tried to make a wooden cross, but those wouldn't last. So, so these are estimates based on, the number of wagons purchased, the amount of food purchased, the amount of people, who said that their relatives went on to the west, but they said that this would amount to 15 people buried every mile of the entire trail of the Oregon Trail. This is a lot of people. It was a tremendous risk to do that. They had 700 pounds of bacon, 75 pounds of coffee. I think they had 25 pounds of tea. I can't remember how many pounds of flour. They packed the flour in 100-pound bags. So they had quite a bit of flour. And they walked. They walked the whole way because the wagons weren't that big. And the wagons were filled with food. They took some furniture, some of their favorite furniture, family furniture, I guess, but they couldn't keep carrying it if they lost one of their animals pulling the wagon. The children and the very old people could ride some of the time, but most of the people walked. Sometimes, well, when I used to talk to my mom about this, actually, when we went to Europe, her first thought was, what on earth made people leave this beautiful place to go to America when all there was forest and nothing? And to risk the ocean crossing, which was very dangerous at that time, and then to go where nobody had ever gone and not know what they would find. Well, something about their life was pretty bad. Something made that complete unknown a better choice than staying there. Now, part of the choice had to do with the fact that there was a real hierarchy within families and an intense hierarchy in passing down the property within a family. The oldest son got everything. The women were often married to different people as an alliance to make a larger extended family with so that there were people you could count on through marriage. And second sons went into the military, and maybe third sons went into the priesthood. But if you wanted to own land, own a business, a lot of this was completely tied up. So they came to America where there was an opportunity. Many of them died. They died for what that freedom of opportunity represented to them. They didn't expect it to be easy. They didn't expect it to be safe. They absolutely didn't know what was going to happen. The same thing with the people going west. Now, my mom also said this kind of funny thing, that the reason people settled in Kansas is that they had started out in the east, which was green and lush and full of shade trees and wood and rivers. And they're out here walking, and honest and truly, the grass, the big blue stem grass was 6 feet tall. They have some at this park, and it's over my head. And I was thinking, man, just walking through that grass. Okay, we have bugs in Kansas. We have tons of bugs. And they are hungry. Mosquitoes, flies, gnats. Oh, and they had to be here from the beginning of time. And they're walking through, and unless you were up on a horse, and even if you were up on a horse, half of your body was down in the grass. You couldn't see. You didn't know where you were going. So my mom's theory is that people settled in Kansas because someone in the wagon said, that's it. Every step we go, there are fewer trees, more space, more nothing. We aren't going another step. That might be the case. Might be the case. And after they stopped here, they didn't know what would happen. There were grasshopper plagues. There are tornadoes out here. They built themselves houses in the dirt. They dug a hole in the ground and they built a dugout. It's called a dugout because you dug out the ground. And the snakes would fall down from the ceiling. How amazing these people were. And how they didn't imagine that the world owed them anything. They didn't imagine that it would be safe. They tried to make it safe for their children, I'm sure. They tried to make it as safe as possible for their children. But there was no penicillin. There's no, like zero antibiotics. I mean, in the first flu, the first pandemic flu in the 1918, 1916, 1920, sulfur. They were giving people sulfur and quinine as if that was going to help. So, what's this all about? This is about the unknown. This is about the fact that life throws things at you. I mean, you could have a perfectly packed wagon and your oxen could go lame. And you're not going to find another oxen halfway between Kansas and Oregon. You might be stuck. You might have to stay somewhere and send somebody back to get some more oxen. You couldn't predict the weather. There were rivers and rivers and rivers and streams and things that had to be crossed. And if you got there after a rain, you might have to sit there for a week waiting for the water to go down. Because if you try to go through one of these streams when they're in their flash flood state, their whole wagon is washed downriver. So surfing, you just do the best with whichever wave comes at you. You stand up or you lay down on your board. Depends on the day, depends on your strength, depends on your skill. You might get knocked off. I think they have these little bungee cord things that you tie the surfboard to your ankle with now so that your board doesn't get totally blown away from you, washed away from you, and then there you are stuck in the ocean having to swim to shore without anything. That was a nice invention. See, that doesn't change the ocean, doesn't change the need for balance. It just is a little technological improvement that makes it easier to get back on your board. So the thing about humans, I think, is that we all have the capacity to embrace life, to grab hold of the experiences that life gives us. Oh, Mary, I had no idea you couldn't swim. I can swim. And I actually kind of even like the ocean. But I've only body surfed. I haven't really surfed. And but we all swim in our emotions all the time. We all swim in the currents of life all the time. And we have our skills, we have our mind, we have the inspiration of people we admire, we have history, which is really important because we are the same as those people. Now, I watched this thing on the weekend about the English and the what was it? It was the soldier class. I think they were maybe mercenaries or something. They were like trained soldiers They had excavated a battlefield and they were looking at the skeletons and assessing the type of fighting that the people had done, the type of wounds that they had had, and what they had been able to heal from. And they discovered that there was quite a bit of amazing, actually, recovery from terrible wounds from these giant broadswords in like the 1400s. That the surgeons on the battlefield had some skills and some tools that the forensic scientists who did this little documentary were quite amazed at, that anybody could recover from a certain kind of injury. Then they were like, this person has been in war before. They have suffered grievous injury, and they went back into war. You know, they were talking about how much courage that had to take when you knew, having been in a war, having been wounded and recovered, then you understand the cost. A lot of times at the beginning of any adventure, we don't understand the cost. As I'm pretty sure that those people who were going out on the Oregon Trail, once they got to Oregon, if somebody said, did you want to go back? I bet they said no. I bet a lot of them, once they got there, if somebody said, would you do this again? They say, I'm really glad to be here, and if I never had to do that again, I would never do that again. So these soldiers just kept fighting. Now, maybe they didn't have an opportunity or a choice. Maybe that, they were maybe a retainer to a lord or a baron or somebody, and it was their job to fight and defend. But we don't fight the same way right now, but the very fiber of our being is the same as those people. We have glasses and contacts and cars. These are inventions and tools. They had swords and shields and little metal hats. And if you had a metal hat, you thought you were pretty hot shit, actually. Sorry, cursing. But if somebody hit you in the head with a sword and you had on that metal hat, it didn't cut your skull open, which was a great blessing. Maybe. But anyway. We have guns now. We have drones that can fight. We aren't necessarily still duking it out hand to hand. But we are the same people who did that. I don't think we're any more evolved. We have more books. We have the internet. We have access to knowledge. But are we using our knowledge as well as we could? Are we taking advantage of the good waves to make the most of our lives? Or do we get knocked off our surfboard and just scream and yell because that wasn't fair, What is fair? Who promised you fair? So surfing is just keeping going in the ocean of life, in the ocean of events that come towards us, in the adventures that come towards us, in the struggles and the challenges, in the joys and fun things and the experiments and the things that don't work out, and we say, learned that, don't have to do that again. So some people say, well, I never wanted to go surfing. I didn't pick to go surfing. Well, some part of you picked because you ended up here on the planet. So whether you're surfing in the ocean or just surfing on planet Earth, I hope that you are able to orient yourself balance yourself. And I hope that you have the courage to get back on that board when it flips you off, because it will flip you off. You just need to know the board's going to turn over. You're going to fall on your head, and you have to figure out what to do next. How to get up, how to go on. Maybe if you can touch the bottom, you grab that board and walk back to shore for a while and rest. So that's kind of a long and rambling story. Yes, nobody promised us a rose garden. Nobody promised us fair. Nobody promised us easy. But we have all the tools to make our journey amazing. And that's how I like to look at my life every day. What's going to happen today? What am I going to discover today? So I hope that you have a great evening, interesting dreams, and a good day tomorrow. Take care.